Hello my dear friends, and welcome to my channel. My name is Barbara, and today we're going to be looking at Pluto in the 12th house. So this video is for you if you have this particular placement. If you're a cross watcher, welcome as well. And this video might also resonate with people who have Scorpio in their 12th house as well. So Pluto in our natal charts deals with change, transformation, the death and rebirth process. It could be our fears, our paranoias, it's our unconscious, it's things that are hidden. We might hide these aspects about ourselves. It deals with power and control as well. So it could be an area in your life, whatever house you guys have it in. It could be the area that you guys may have felt powerless in when you guys were younger through some form of crisis, trauma. Maybe somebody belittled you guys or just made you guys feel powerless in this particular area. And then eventually throughout your life, maybe you guys seek power in this particular area, and then eventually what you want to do is neutralize somewhere in the middle where it's kind of like this silent confidence. I see it as a pendulum swing with the Plutonian Scorpionic energy. You go out of this extreme into that extreme, and then eventually you're going to neutralize somewhere in the middle with that Plutonian energy. Now Pluto also deals with sex, death, rebirth, joint finances, taxes, and the occult as well. It also deals with psychology as well on its own. So already Pluto is very, very hidden by itself. And now you guys have it in your 12th house, which is the hidden house. So the 12th house in our natal charts is that final house. It's going to be the unconscious, the subconscious. It's going to be the collective unconscious. It's going to be that house of sometimes trauma as well, traumatic things that may have taken place. It is the healing house. So this is the healer's access, the 12th house, 6th house access. So you guys yourselves might possess a lot of healing energy. And a lot of time, the people who do have the most amount of healing energy have been through a lot. So you guys have that Plutonian energy going through your 12th house. So it definitely could have been something that took place when you guys were younger that was maybe very intense, maybe very traumatic. Maybe it was some form of trigger warning abuse could have taken place as well when you have Pluto going through your 12th house. It could be something that you guys suppressed deep within. Maybe you guys even forgot about it. Sometimes people have traumatic experiences that they don't even remember took place, or they know that it took place, but they don't actually have the recollection and memory of it. So I actually have a video called The Connection Between Trauma, Cognitive Dissonance, Spiritual Awakening, and your psychic gifts and abilities. So all these things are connected because also the 12th house does deal with your psychic gifts and abilities. It deals with the unseen realms in this way. It also deals with maybe your dreams, like in dream time when you guys are sleeping. It's all these things that are taking place. So it's really, really interesting when you guys have Pluto going through this house, because whatever house Pluto goes through in all of our natal charts is basically the house that you guys are experiencing the most amount of transformation through. So you guys yourselves are transforming through this house, and then in turn you're transforming the collective as well, eventually through that house as well, and then potentially the generation, because Pluto is a generational planet. There could be a lot of generational things that maybe took place, especially with 12th house energy. I do find that people who have 12th house in their natal chart, you will see 12th house kind of traveling throughout the family line. So there could have even been patterns within the family line that were hidden or covert or secretive that maybe got to you guys, and you guys are the ones that are bringing it to light. So the whole thing with like Pluto / Scorpionic energy, what I've been saying in these videos is like Pluto goes through some form of change or transformation or trauma, and like Scorpio energy does not want to appear weak, okay? It's a very, very sensitive sign, but it does have that little stinger. So it's like, it's very self-preserving at the same time, and it doesn't want to be open and it doesn't want to be vulnerable, even though at the same time it's desperately seeking this. So it's kind of like a paradox, this energy, but the whole thing is with Scorpionic energy, it's like after they go through this whole like transformation within it, then they're able to talk about it eventually. Scorpio never wants people to expose it for them before they're ready, although sometimes it might happen. More often than not, if you're trying to really, really hide something, somebody might bring it to the surface or say it, like if you're doing it in a shady way, I mean, not in like an unconscious way, but if it's happening in like a shady way, or there's some sort of like shady intention behind it and you're really trying to hide it for this reason, usually it does end up coming to the surface. But Scorpio deals with all these things because Scorpio really does go through all of the evolutions through the human experience, which is through the depths of the darkness, all of the lower vibrational emotions, all of the lower vibrational, maybe even actions, or even just like experiences or emotions, like all these things, all this junk the Scorpionic person kind of goes through. They go through this intense turmoil / Plutonian person as well, / Pluto, whatever house you guys have it going through in this video. It is the 12th house, but I'm kind of giving you guys an idea of how the energy works. So it goes through all of this, goes through this kind of like alchemical process is pretty much the way that I've been psychically seeing it. It's happening energetically and behind the scenes. You guys go through this huge change and transformation within. It's all happening in the dark, behind the scenes. Nobody knows that this is taking place. Nobody could even maybe pinpoint, especially because it is Pluto and the 12th house. Most people wouldn't even know what you guys have gone through. And then eventually you guys get into that Phoenix rising state where maybe now you're ready to talk about it, share. And then through you guys sharing and maybe sharing your story and talking about these things in general, just like talking overall, talking is very healing. So through this whole process, you guys kind of come into that healer position. Now, usually what happens with a lot of 12th house people, anywhere where people have 12th house in their natal chart, is like these people actually possess a lot of light. And it's just the way that this plane is, unfortunately, up until this point. It's like people who have the most amount of light tend to be like almost like energetic in a way, like targets. I don't know any other term to use. I'm not trying to make it sound like a paranoid type of thing, like people are out to get you guys. It's not this, but it's kind of like a moth to a flame. Like from a young age, you guys may have been suppressed in this area. Your power may have been taken away from you in this area, and then it kind of maybe puts you guys into like even darker and darker energy. Like Scorpio in the 12th house is really, really interesting. Like Pluto in the 12th, or even Scorpio in the 12th. Like these people, when they're in the shadow, they can be very, very intense, because it's like they've had a lot of their power stripped away from them, that like if they kind of get to the point where it's like they're completely disconnected from their emotions and completely disconnected from everything, they can become very like power hungry themselves, and like using like fear tactics or like intimidation tactics to like basically not get themselves to feel that way again. That's the whole thing. It's like that's the pendulum swing that I really talk about with the Plutonian / Scorpionic energy. It's like your power gets taken away from you, and then you might go into the extreme like shadow of the Plutonian / Scorpionic energy, where maybe you're like using fear or intimidation, just like your overall vibe is like this, or you guys are seeking like positions of power so you guys don't feel powerless again. But it's like after you go through that whole like transformational process within, you guys kind of find yourself neutralized somewhere in the middle, where you guys are actually in that healer ability and that healer role. But this energy could also go into the shadow, where it's like where the whole shadow and light version of yourselves is like very, very separated. Like you guys have very much like suppress the shadow aspects of yourself and like the things that have taken place. And like I mentioned, sometimes you don't even remember, especially if it was something super, super traumatic. So this could be taking place, and then you guys maybe discover spirituality or like all these wonderful like high vibrational things, but like there's this huge separation. So in this way, like this energy could be like sometimes those like cult leaders as well, where it's like they're using spirituality, but there's like still like narcissism there. So they're using it as a way to gain control over people. Obviously not everyone who has this placement is going to become a cult leader or like this intense, like dark individual. Absolutely not. I'm just kind of trying to show you guys how the energy can go into the shadow if it hasn't been integrated within itself. So after you guys integrate all these things, these experiences, you take off all these energies, all of the people's energies off of you as well, because the 12th house does deal with the collective unconscious. So sometimes what can take place with this energy is like sometimes you guys absorb things, because it's very much like absorbing energy with the 12th house. Sometimes you guys absorb things that aren't even yours. So maybe you guys internalize an experience that was around you, for example, or somebody else's. And it's really interesting because it's like part of this, especially when you're unaware, is like in a way you're purging that for other people, this energy, but it's like you kind of want to just like completely take it off of you. Like really try to get down to like who you guys truly are. What are your like wants, needs, and desires? What are your own triggers? What are your own wounds? Like all these types of things. You guys can really, really know who you guys are. It's kind of like developing that solar plexus chakra is really the way that I always see the 12th house person. You want to develop strong boundaries and like the core and know who you guys are, because only then you guys are going to be able to take off all these energies off of you. Take this person's energy off of you, that person's energy off of you. It's very, very intense, this energy. But eventually when you guys go through this whole process, you get into that divine version of the 12th house, which is the healer. You guys kind of have this like silent power to you, or it's like you guys have learned to use your own internal power within, or just like the crisis and like the moments that you guys have been through, maybe as a form of fuel. Depends obviously on the rest of your natal chart, but maybe as a form of fuel, like to fuel your projects or your passion, or just like overall maybe help people, because the 12th house, like wherever you have it in your natal chart, is always of service to others. Now the thing is, it's like it's very interesting because like Virgo, which is the 6th house, is also of service to others, but the 12th house is more so like energetically of service to others. Sometimes they call it like the quote unquote sacrificial house. So sometimes it can go into the shadow as well, of like martyrship, or like really feeling that it's like going through this whole thing of like sacrificing yourself for other people. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but with Plutonian energy, because it is Scorpionic, you can go through these extremes. So really, really grounding is going to be really important, because after you guys kind of go through this entire process, what I was mentioning earlier is like when you go through something traumatic, and this is really for everybody on the earth plane, regardless of like the astrological placements, but like when you go through trauma, especially if it's something really, really like intense, it basically shoots you out of your body. So you are now out of body, and you're now also very, very well aware of like the psychic realms and the metaphysical realm. So that's why like that 12th house also deals with psychic gifts and abilities and the metaphysical realms. But if you're not integrated, or you're fragmented, or you haven't processed these things, or you're just overall in like the lower chakras, the lower chakra wounds, I have a whole series on the chakra, so definitely check it out if you guys are interested in learning more about the lower chakra wounds. But if you're in any of these energies, which a lot of people are, especially when they're younger, unaware, it's just like the nature of the plane, unfortunately. It's just the way that it is. But when you're unaware and you're in these lower chakra wounds, you could be operating maybe out of survival, or out of fear, or you could be operating out of shame, like all these things that kind of control people. Well, if you guys get prematurely opened psychically and you guys are in the lower chakras, well then you can go into more fear, or you can go into more paranoia, or you can go into escapism, or you can really go into like the shadow of the crown chakra is really what that is. When you guys are psychically open, but you're operating out of the lower chakras, it's kind of like a progression to this, because then you have sometimes people who are open psychically, maybe they're getting more in tune with their psychic gifts and abilities, but still there's some form of wound there. So it could go into that energy that I was telling you guys about, where you're taking advantage of other people. Obviously it's not going to be everybody, and it depends on the rest of your natal chart to see how this energy can manifest, but it's like, it's just the nature of this plane that like the darkness is just so strong, and like the unconscious and the subconscious and like the shadow aspects are really strong, that when we're unaware of them, they tend to be in the driver's seat. So it's like we really want to master the subconscious and the unconscious. And by the way, I'm not a psychologist by any means, but this is the whole thing here, and our shadows and our shadow self and our shadow traits. And especially if you start going into the higher vibrations, then you really want to focus, because the thing is like the energy is still going to be there. That's the whole thing. So it's like it really needs to be acknowledged or expressed or purged in one way, shape, or form, if it's like a dark side of the self, and everybody has this. And eventually when you guys are able to transmute all these lower things and maybe the fears and like the lower vibrational emotions that pull you down, only then you're able to go up, and then you're able to go into the higher chakras and into the more divine version of the psychic gifts and abilities. So it's really interesting, because it's like also when you're psychically open, you could pick up on a lot of like fears from the collective as well, or like unconscious things from the collective, maybe internalize them as your own. So it's not an easy placement at all. But the thing is, it's also not like doom and gloom either. With astrology, it doesn't really matter whether it's good or bad. At least we can know what's happening in our energetic fields and our energetic imprint to see how can we kind of rein the energy in and bring it back to ourselves. And especially because it is Pluto, in that case, it's like it's really trying to reclaim your power in this particular area. So this energy in its divine form, huge psychic, huge healer, mystic, like really here to be of service and to help people and to shine brightly. That could be another thing that took place. Maybe your light just got dimmed when you were younger, maybe you didn't feel like you fit in, and these types of things. But the thing is, at the end of the day, like the soul has its own path, so it doesn't really matter whether you fit in with people or not. It's like we are all here collectively, yes, but that's like a huge collective wound, which is like trying to fit in constantly with the community and not be shunned or banned. Like that's a collective wound of its own, because that used to be punishment like back in the day, where like the community will laugh at you or humiliate you or whatever it is, like publicly. So once everybody kind of gets a grasp on these like fears and collective fears, and just like also understand that they're not even ours, it's just something that's been like a collective experience, then only can you kind of come fully into your power and like not care about these types of things. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The soul is kind of here on its own journey, and it's here on its own evolutionary journey. And like the more we can clear these like lower chakra things and shadow things and unconscious things, the more we can go into the higher vibrations, the love vibrations, the truth vibrations, and really live that life of like self-alignment after we've cleared a lot of these like darker things. But it is a process and it is a journey. It's definitely not fun. Sometimes you might have to go and scream in a forest or in your pillow. Like it is what it is, but at least then it's out of your system and you've released it. And like this energy also, because it doesn't want to appear weak, it might not necessarily do these things in the earlier part of the journey. Like this energy could be very resistant to just like any healing modalities, or even like talking about it or even sharing it. But that's the thing with like the Scorpionic Plutonian energy. It's like the energy is still there and the energy still wants to be expressed. So it's like sometimes what I've noticed with Pluto / Scorpio is like this energy, because it's still there and it's in your natal chart, it still needs to be expressed in whatever area it's in. So it's like a lot of the time people might go into the shadow of the energy, or they might go into hiding with this energy. They might live double lives when it comes to this energy as well, or they might really try to suppress it. Like when you have it in the 12th house, you could really try to suppress this. Now, one more thing that I also want to mention in this video is that with Pluto in the 12th house, anything that is 12th house in a natal chart, the way that I always see it is like it's carried over from a past life, and 12th house can also be generational as well. So all these things that I mentioned, maybe they're not even you, but maybe there's something that's been carried through the family line and maybe it gets to you. For example, maybe you could even be like the suppression of psychic gifts and abilities. Maybe it was shamed, maybe it was just not expressed, and it gets to you and you're the one who chooses to act on these psychic gifts and abilities. So it could be this, but also it could be carried over from a past life. So it's really important to explore and see first, like, is it something that took place in my current lifetime? Is it something that took place within my family line or the ancestral line? And if you can't find your answers there, then maybe you're carrying some form of traumatic experience or crisis moment from a past life as well. Only you'll know the answer to that after you kind of do that self-exploration to see, is it this life or a past life? But that could be something that's taking place as well with the 12th house energy. So it's intense. Like the 12th house definitely isn't easy, but a lot of it is about grounding, healing, purging, transmuting and closing things out. You're kind of closing out that cycle. So it could be this as well. And one more thing that it could be vis-a-vis past lives, it could also be in a past life, maybe you also felt powerless and then you come through in this lifetime really seeking power and control in a certain area in your life. So maybe it's this as well. But at the end of the day, self-exploration will really help you guys get to the bottom of this and know where it's actually coming from. So with all that being said, I'm going to wrap up my video on Pluto in the 12th house here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please do like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of the day.